A fake Instagram account has a very powerful message about addiction. Watch. All right, so that account, that was a model, and she was playing Louise Delage. And Louise Delage was created from the Paris ad agency BETC. BETC was hired by Addiction Aid, and the whole point about creating the social media campaign was an attempt to show how easily we can overlook signs of addiction. Thoughts, 5 words or less?
This is Instagrate.
Instagrammers Anonymous?
Fake person didn't have real friends.
We often overlook the signs. Let's look at, do you want to look at the photos too really quick?
Yes,
let's look at a
let's
few
do it.
photos. Okay, so we see the majority of her photos. You're going to see that she always has some sort of drink with her. There's a bottle of wine, it looks like, maybe a rosé.
They're the most typical Instagram model pictures you could ever imagine, too.
Right? And then that's a
Oh,
little
they're
bit,
at this
a little bit more
horseshit.
social of a gathering.
Oh my God, they're eating cantaloupe.
And
Evil.
canned fish.
Cry for
You
help.
see the canned fish,
See,
sardines?
it's French. This is what people do in France.
Well, let's see all of them. I think they mean collectively. There's another one where she,
No, yeah, the
again, it
whole
looks
thing,
like
it's
rose,
every-
but it's covered by the roses.
Every single picture has alcohol. in
right.
it.
That's the point. Of course, you know, just looking at these
Where's Waldo in
these
the back?
photographs periodically
Oh
on
my
someone's
God.
Instagram wouldn't be a red flag.
She's losing
But
it. She's
when-
on such withdrawal, she doesn't realize she doesn't have a cigarette between her fingers.
But when every photo, they're saying when every photo there's a drink, to just be aware. Now, of course, you're not going to base your entire thinking, oh, I think, you know, Amir might have an addiction problem if I'm just looking at his Instagram, but it might allow you to just, maybe I should have a talk with Amir. Maybe I should just be more aware of what Amir's doing when we're out.
Yeah, that's good. As long as that's the message. Because
Yeah.
what this says to me is like, of course, her real friends didn't step up and say anything because she's a fictional character.
But there are people out there that definitely leave signs on social media. Look at some
but
of those.
here's the thing: is like there was no. If this is an experiment, we didn't have like her actual friends doing shit. Like, if I have booze in every photo of mine, I would expect not the people that just randomly followed me on Instagram, but my actual true friends to step up. And I think
Right.
that's a more important message. Otherwise, it's just like another venue to randomly judge people on Instagram and annoyingly be like, you have a problem. We've never met.
That wouldn't be, hopefully that's not the case. I hope that it's just reminding people to just be aware, even if it's your family members. Maybe you live somewhere else and you haven't been around them in a while. Maybe you do talk to them on the phone, but a lot of times with addiction, you hide that. But then if you see all these photos on Instagram and you're looking at every photo and perhaps every photo they have a drink, maybe it'll help you to just be more aware. Because look at, even on Facebook, I have some really dear friends that have shared some really dark posts, and then later I find out that they were going through a really dark time, and that was reflective of that time.
Right.
I think the hardest thing is when telling the difference between when people are like posting on Instagram and Facebook because they just want attention versus like they have an actual problem.
That's a
I
good
don't know how
point.
to handle that.
That's a really good point. But even if they want attention, there's something's going on there.
Yeah, I don't know. This thing is like, oh, I won't have any fiction if my fictional friends are posting stuff with booze in it. Like, I know my friends from hanging out with them if people are going through some rough times. And like then you kind of find a good constructive way to do stuff. I think this is a bad thing. I think this BETC is a bunch of bitches.
Do you guys agree with Brett, or do you not agree with
Fake.
Brett?
It's all about like I'm an ad agency showing that I can do an effective ad campaign.
But what's the message? What's
Yeah,
the message?
That's the message.
For me, it always comes down to intention, and I think that their intention here was good to raise awareness. But I really do actually agree with a lot of what Brett is saying, because this is, if someone's really struggling with addiction, it does take sort of a person-to-person response to that, and not just sort of a blanket response or just sort of a cold response over Instagram.
But you
Like
think
sliding into your
hold
DMs.
on,
But
hold
I
on.
think- but I do think
Do you think the
intention was
response?
good.
But I agree with everything you both are saying. But do you think where I disagree is I don't think the response is that you then go on their Instagram and hit them up. I think it just gives you a clue up to where maybe one of your friends is at. Maybe you haven't seen them for 6 months, and maybe you schedule lunch with them. Doesn't mean that you bring anything up to them, because you can't base everything from someone's social media. But maybe you're just a little bit more aware to see if there's something is going on. I don't think that means that you go and handle it on Instagram.
that's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah, but
I'm
I just
fine
mean
with
that for the people that didn't, when Brett was saying about this fictional person, and like of course no one said anything. because
Yeah,
she's
but
not-
like
have
that's
any
the
real
thing.
Amir,
She's a
Amir.
fictional person, but the people that like her pictures aren't fictional. They're really following her. They thought this was a real person.
They did.
Yeah.
I think that's a more interesting question to ask. Like, what are people looking for when they like pictures?
They're
And
probably
what do
real
they-
pervos.
Yeah,
It's like
well,
a sexy girl standing on
and-
the side of a lake. I'm gonna watch. Look
She
at
got
that.
40,000 Instagram followers like that. Now,
And then
mind
who
you,
knows? It's like that might be an ad buy and targeted.
well, they claimed that they used clever hashtags, and then they did target some very influential
That's
teenagers.
the more interesting thing about it is fuck this whole thing about the addiction, because that's a personal thing with real friends.
Yeah,
The more
but
interesting
maybe you haven't
thing
seen
is
your
like they
friend in
got a
6
fictional
months.
person to get this many followers.
Yeah, that's what I think
Yeah.
too.
Because
Well,
they
that-
gamed the system.
That is an interesting thing, but I don't think you can fault a company for trying to
Yeah.
raise awareness for how addiction sometimes is
Just being
manifested
cynical.
on social media. And I can't, imagine, what's the alternative? They actually play this out. They find someone who is struggling with a crippling alcohol addiction with a large social media following, and they're like, look, we're going to help you, but give it like 4 months to see if your friends reach out. Like, that to me is shit. I think the intention here is good, but I do think that there is a larger element to the story that we should talk about, which is how they got all these people to follow a fictional person.
Well, no, they did hashtags, and they also reached out to key influential people that shared their accounts.
But that's an interesting story. I mean,
Well, that's, to me,
along with
makes
the,
sense.
along
If a
with the
famous
addiction,
person came in here and shared our account, we would get more followers.
But if it was a fictional person for the means of trying to promote something that an ad agency is trying to promote, even if it's good, even if they're trying to promote awareness about addiction, it's still interesting, like what means they'll do to get there, to get that following, to spread that message. I think both sides of this are really interesting, and it's worth talking about. It's worth talking about how they did it, but it's absolutely
think
worth talking
I
about
definitely
the
get it for,
intention
like,
behind it.
Yeah,
The
awareness is
enabling-
always good.
I get this is possibly enabling, and if it was a real person, they would probably see that, I'm getting followers because I am doing the right tags, but I am living a fabulous life with booze everywhere. That is more of what's might be enabling someone to, their goals are, get famous and followers at any expense, even if the expense is my health. I mean, there's people out there who are
It's a really
huge,
good point.
like
It's a
what's
good
My
point.
Drunk Kitchen.
Yeah.
Like that changed the life of the internet, because
Right.
and people get drunk, coworkers get drunk, a bunch of people are getting drunk. These famous folks are getting famouser because
Right.
they get wasted. I mean, my girlfriend and I do a show called Hammered where we get drunk and use power tools.
Yeah, no, that's a good
really
point. I
dangerous.
think that's a good point, and I think it's called Hammered, right?
Yeah.
it's amazing. I think
great show.
I think at the end of the day, I think raising awareness is always good, and at the end of the day, to also, not to repeat myself, but to also be aware of all social media. Like I said, I've learned if. You could easily find out that somebody's leaving some clues on Facebook that are going through a really hard time, or if you look at their Instagram,
So you
it
guys,
just reminds
you've
you.
had experience
I've
like
had
that,
a
where
very
you
direct
see
experience.
the clues of someone
One in
and
particular.
their negative behavior.
Yeah, I've seen other ones where I was like Brett, where I was like, shoot, I don't know if this is like a call to like. Is
Brett,
this
stop liking Dance Moms.
No, I don't mean like Brett's account. I meant like what you said earlier. Like I didn't know if this was just for attention, but then I had one friend in particular where after that post, I immediately called that person, and that person, then I had some words with the person that person lived with, and that person was going through a very dark time, and we intervened, and thank God. So
Good.
social media nowadays is like a diary where you're going to see
Yeah.
somebody's like innermost workings come out, whether it's on their Instagram or their Facebook, and we have to be aware because it matters. So I think raising awareness, it may not be perfect, I agree. You also don't want people to go overboard and start being judgy just by looking at someone's photos, but just take it with a grain of salt and be aware.
If on a
Final
lighter note question, if people were to look at your Instagram, what would they say you're addicted to?
Food.
Animals.
I'm so
Food, animals.
fat. Yeah.
Camping.
and adventures.
Lately
Adventures with you.
adventures.
Yeah, camping
Yeah.
with my girlfriend.
What about you?
Facial moisturizing mask. That they
Yes,
sell at
yes,
yes.
Sephora. I love
Oh
them.
my
I got
God.
no
Amazing.
problem with it.
They'd be like, Brett is
I
addicted
get jealous.
to spa problems.
I
Those
get,
things
I
are
get jealous
dope.
of Brett.
My
Treatments.
girlfriend goes to Sephora and she comes home with like 6 of them, and at the beginning I was like, that's so stupid. But now I'm like,
I know.
And don't
Ladies'
you?
night.
It's
And
the
do
best.
you not glow afterwards?
oh,
Yes.
I fucking glow. I'm 74 years old.
Yeah.
All right.
Great.
Well, that was the longest segment we've ever done. Please share your thoughts in the comment section below. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you next time on Pop Sugar.